And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald. You can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. Jimmy Lemke, my co-host, will not be joining us this episode, but filling in for him again is Matt Dudek.
Hey there, everybody.
And of course, Matt is at Grizz Talk OU, and you can follow the podcast on Twitter as well at Horizon RT. Before we get started, wanted to break out a kind of a not only a programming note but a note about the website. I'm sure if you follow the Twitter account, you know we've actually been looking for writers for all of the Horizon Leagues, each of the Horizon League schools, and we're going to introduce everybody in 2 weeks. So week of August 11th, be sure to be on the lookout. We're going to have, at this point in time, it looks like we've got most of the folks who have agreed to join us as writers to come on, and we'll kind of introduce to everybody on that episode. So I'm looking forward to that, and I know that I have been waiting to do that for a long time. We've got the website now, horizonroundtable.com, and we just have the podcast on it, so might as well do some more with it.
I'm excited to see what everybody kicks out for content for that.
Yes. And we'll talk about kind of how that whole thing's going to how we're going to be scheduling that. I mean, we're still in the off season, but we'll let everybody in on everything the week of August 11th. So you don't want to miss it. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure that everybody else is as well. So that was that. So Matt, as soon as it started, it is now ended. It seems like we, for the last month it's just been Cleveland State all the time. Well, Cleveland State has no sooner does Cleveland State get rid of their head coach is that they have a new head coach again.
Well, you needed something good to start heading the right direction there, so you got a coach.
Yes. So in what I can only describe is probably a record time, a record speed on this. They just swapped out Dennis's.
They did.
They did swap out Dennis's. Yes. So obviously Dennis Felton is no longer the head coach. And late last week on Friday, Cleveland State announced that they were bringing in Dennis Gates, the assistant coach out of Florida. Florida State. God, yeah, I don't want to get in the middle of a skirmish because of that.
Nope, you got to stay out of Florida State.
Yes, it is Florida State. Yes, he spent the last 8 years with Leonard Hamilton. Man, and I didn't realize how old Leonard Hamilton was. He's like he's 70 years old, and it seems like his teams are getting better and better every year. It's kind of like it's really weird. It's like Benjamin Button is coaching or something.
I mean, I don't know. I always feel like anytime I watch Florida State stuff, they just kind of fizzle out. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a huge Florida State basketball person. But either way, you have a coach. Yeah, that's good.
This is true. So essentially, and what's striking to me about this hire for Dennis Gates is that he's a young guy. He's a young guy. He's 39, which by the way means that both the athletic director and the basketball coach are now younger than I am. So I've obviously reached angry old guy stage. All right, this is a big thing for me. Don't know how I'm going to take it.
Accept that though.
I know. So yeah, he's a young guy. So it's been kind of following this pattern for Cleveland State, kind of going with the young, hungry guys over the last the last few hires. Obviously, Garrett's one of them. Scott Garrett's one of them, and they brought in a couple of administrative people, a bunch of other young folks. I mean, there seems to be kind of it seems to me they're kind of going into the direction of that maybe they should have like a long time ago, but they just never did. Because let's face it, the last regime was a bunch of retreads. you get John Perry, who's a massive retread, and then you get Mike Thomas, who was a retread, And, Mike Thomas hires Dennis Felton, who's a retread. Not to say that that's not necessarily a bad thing, but, we got the end results out of all of that, and it wasn't great.
Like you're saying, it looks like Cleveland State's going to try to go a different direction, which is clearly needed because what you guys have been doing isn't working. From attendance, from all angles, something needs to change. So hopefully these quote unquote younger guys that less than 40 is somehow young. I love that personally, but
there you go. In terms of kind of in terms of the athletics landscape, being in your 30s, you still got your whole life ahead of you. I mean. So that's kind of how I see it, at least.
No, you're not wrong. I just like I'm saying, I love that outlook. But I mean, you guys are gonna try something different, and hopefully that's a change throughout your entire department, even just beyond men's basketball. I mean, there's just so many issues going on at Cleveland State. So hopefully this is a sign of change.
I think that's the big, and I think that was kind of the big thing when Scott Garrett was initially hired, that. Harlan Sands, who's the president of Cleveland State, kind of saw that, it wasn't, when he came in, he assessed the situation, and he obviously saw something was very, very, very wrong. And all of these steps to this point are hopefully to the point where, it's a step in the right direction. So, that said, though, I still am kind of struggling with what prompted all this in the first place, because nobody does. This is not a thing that happens to any program in the middle of July, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. I mean, was Dennis Felton not the guy for this job? Absolutely he wasn't. Of course he wasn't. Could they have kind of toughed it out for the next year? Sure, absolutely. Could they have survived losing their top scorer Tyree Appleby, who is actually at Florida, not Florida State? Yeah. It would suck, absolutely, but I mean, for whatever reason, that's what happened. I would love to get some answers as to why that took place. I don't think we're never gonna know the full extent of it. I don't think.
Tough to tell. I mean, obviously something was up to have all those transfers, and then when they fired Felton, I mean, you guys were down to 3 scholarship players at one point last week.
Yes. As of right before Jeff Goodman posted the Dennis Gates hiring. Incidentally, there were 3. And by the way, God, you got those guys are Goodman, Rothstein. Where do those guys get? I mean, Jesus. I mean,
they're quick.
I know, and I was so mad too because I literally heard I had actually gotten confirmation that it was Dennis Gates like at the same exact time. If I'd have gotten it like a minute before, I'm to my everlasting shame, I didn't beat Jeff Goodman out the gate on this one.
Those 25 Cleveland State fans would have been so proud of you for breaking it.
I know.
You were so close, Bob.
I was so close. I missed it by a minute, and oh man! But you know what? It is. But those guys are. That's why those guys. That's why those guys do what they can do, because they got the. I mean, they got ears inside the walls everywhere, man. It's crazy.
That's why it's their job.
I cannot. Yeah, can't hate on them for that. Can't hate on them for that. But would have liked to get one, just one. But I'll live. I'll live. Yeah. So all right, great. Congratulations, guys! In 10 minutes, I made it about me. That's awesome. This is the kind of summer I've been having. But to your other point, by the way, that there were only confirmed only 3 scholarship players left on the roster. It was Cash Thomas, Al Eichelberger, and the JUCO guy Torrey Patton, who incidentally was And here you have 3 guys, and from what I understand, in spite of everybody getting, everybody weighing their options, those were the three guys that weren't really necessarily going anywhere. For sure. Like I said, kind of understandable because you have in Cash, you have a guy who's going into a senior year. You got Al Eichelberger, who's kind of stuck because he's already transferred once. He transferred from DePaul, and now he can't necessarily transfer again until he gets done with maybe next year as a grad transfer, but still. And Torrey Patton, I was a little concerned that he is a JUCO guy, but the JUCO isn't exactly his first stop. He actually started his college career at Akron, so those three guys were kind of always going to be around. We were speculating that they were going to be playing with a bunch of guys they recruited from the rec center, more than likely.
It looked that way for a minute.
And everybody has, and I know I made at least three. I know I've referenced this multiple times. For those of you who the movie Necessary Roughness from that early '90s football movie with Scott Bakula and Sinbad. And if you haven't seen it, and Jason Bateman was in it too. I think he was like the illiterate rich kid or something like that in that movie. So those are the references I'm making to that. Except it's that was football and this is basketball, obviously. Not that said, now that they got a coach in place, I really do think because when you look at it right now, you have, Justin Hill, the point guard from California. He actually, as soon as they made the announcement, he actually tweeted out he was recommitting at Cleveland State. Yeah, so we're back up to 4. One of the other things, too, that I thought was very interesting, though, and I think there will be more, and the reason I say that because when the announcement was made on Friday, I think a little later on Friday night, during the day, Scott Garrett actually tweeted out a picture with Gates talking to the players and a couple of other ones. There were 8 people in that room. There were 8 players in that room. I counted 8.
I mean, I have to imagine some of those players, now that there's a coach, they're obviously going to talk to them.
Yeah.
They're in the portal. It doesn't mean they can't return.
Exactly.
And for a lot of them, it's going to make sense to come back versus sit out a year somewhere. It's so late in the year. Yeah. I mean, unless you're Detroit Mercy, very few people have scholarship offers to give anybody right now. I mean, everybody's roster is pretty much full unless you were, maybe holding on to one for a transfer. But, so for a lot of these players, it's going to be a decision of, do you take your school and, a year at a Division I school and play ball, or do you sit somewhere and, that wasn't your first choice, and it's going to feel like a rush decision now.
No.
And I think some of those, I think you'll probably get 3 or 4 more that will recommit.
Yeah.
And that'll make more sense. I know personally there's one that is in the portal right now that I would love to see locally. But again, I'm biased as an Oakland fan, and I admit that. But I think if
you're really narrowing it down because there's only a handful of guys in the Detroit area who are still in the portal right now.
If Gates can get Spider Johnson back on your roster, I think you guys are going to be in decent shape. I think he's a hell of a ball player.
Yeah,
I
personally really like Spider's game. I know one of the things when he came in, and this is true of a couple of the other guys a couple of the other freshmen that he might have benefited from a redshirt year. I'm not saying that exactly. Well, it didn't happen, so it doesn't matter. But you saw kind of the progress he was making as the year went on, and so I'm actually I would love to be on a fly on the wall when Gates calls Spider. I hope that's one of the guys I hope changes their mind.
Sure.
I would love to see him back at Cleveland State. That would be great. But it's up to him, obviously. One of the people who actually was in the room that was pictured was Steph Kenich too. I'm thinking maybe. So it seems to me that Steph Kenich not only did put his name in the transfer portal, but at the same time, looks like he's still on campus, and he's been on campus the whole time. So maybe he's thinking, okay, maybe this is, again, maybe, he was in the room meeting with Dennis Gates. So, is that a sign that Steph Kenich is going to be coming back?
Would that then be the room where it happened? I'm just checking.
What's that now?
Would that make that the room where it happened?
When he was talking to the players?
Yeah, never mind. It's a Hamilton reference. I'm a theater nerd. Move on.
Oh, God. You see, I haven't seen Hamilton yet. I'm going to hell.
No, you're good. You're good. It's one of the things from anyway. Moving on.
So,
7 people might have followed that. That's fine.
There you go. So I like I don't, again, I also, just like Spider, I don't know if Steph Kenich will be one of those guys who comes back as well. I would like to see Steph come back. Only because of the fact he kind of had an up and down year last year, honestly.
Cleveland State had an up and down year, I mean.
Cleveland State had an entire, they had a year that was kind of okay and then just well off the rails in January. So that was, after that, it was kind of going up and then it went all downhill from there. But at the same time, if you could get a guy like Steph Kenich to come back, who actually has, who was a starter on this team, who was one of the leading, who was one of the, who was a contributor on this team. I mean, you're going to need all the help you can get, and if you can get some of these guys back, you can get a Spider Johnson back, you get a Steph Kenich back, that would be great. Some of the guys who, I would also kind of look at some of the guys who entered the portal, got into the portal or decommitted late. One of them is Raekwon Taylor. Another JUCO guy. He might be coming back. The one person I'm not sure is going to end up, the one player I don't think, I'm not sure would come back as Dibaji Walker. I don't know. Yeah. That one of all the players that are in the portal right now, the one who's probably most likely to transfer out is going to be Dibaji Walker. On top of the players who have already transferred out, like Rashad Williams, like Tyree Appleby, and it looks like Rasheem Dunn is already the St. Francis transfer. He's already back on the East Coast, and he's already looking at schools, Siena, St. John's. So it's pretty likely that he's definitely looking away from Cleveland State. So yeah, I think he's definitely going to be not a guy who's coming back.
Sure.
But Dibaji Walker, I mean that'll be up to them. But I mean, I really think he's got some options. Honestly, if I'm John Brandon at Cincinnati, I'd be giving him a call, saying what's up.
I mean, the reality at the end of the day is, Cleveland State's probably not going to be very good this year, and that's okay. No. Gates has to get the right people in to start instilling his culture.
Yeah.
And, he's got to find those guys that are going to fit into what he needs and not, it's not even about putting out a decent product this year, but all right, it's like a rebuild year, I'm unfortunately a Detroit Tigers fan. I know all about the rebuild right now. Like, you got to bottom out, and this is definitely Cleveland State's bottom out, but you have to have the right people to rebuild it, and you have to hope that your AD and this new hire are those people for your basketball.
So, as I understand, and I think he's going to get a really long, Gates is going to get a really long runway this year, obviously, just because of how late everything came to pass, knowing that it's not going to be a good year. We knew this to begin with. It was even before Dennis Felton got fired. We knew it was going to be this year was not going to be great.
Sure.
And then everybody, heading for the exits, making me think, all right, this is not only is this going to be a bad year, this may be worse than anything I've ever seen. And I lived through the 4-25 Cleveland State team from 2003-2004 that was featured by a 21-game losing streak to close out the season. That was fun.
That's just a good time to be had by all.
Oh yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I think from a wins and losses standpoint, you're probably it's not going to be good. I mean, it wasn't going to be good anyway, so I'm not really. I'm okay with that. I think you're absolutely right. I think this will be during this time though. This will be when Gates starts putting in what he's putting in for his overall philosophy. One of the things I should make note of is the fact that, for 2 years, all I heard from Dennis Felton is positionless basketball. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea what the hell that is. I must work in the NBA or something because it didn't make any. I mean,
it wasn't working there.
It didn't make any sense to me. I mean, So I'm gonna venture to guess that with the hiring of Dennis Gates, we have officially that is officially the last time we're gonna hear the words positionless basketball at Cleveland State. Hopefully that's it.
So. I understand the concept of it. I get it, and yeah, it does work when you're talking with high level players. Yeah. But when you're talking about a mid major, you're probably not going to have the people that can flex in the way that you need to for that to work.
And you saw them try, but not really. It just didn't work. I mean, not even a little bit. And again, it didn't work on not only the level, not only what we saw, but it clearly didn't work behind the scenes either. To the extent that everybody was trying to get the hell out of there.
I think what we really saw was everybody wanted to leave anyway for whatever reason, in that they got their excuse.
Yeah.
They got the, and maybe for some of them that's even the try to get the waiver, which is supposed to be even harder now. They were just waiting for a reason to leave.
Yeah.
They got it. And hey, Appleby clearly used it to his advantage. He's at a much better school. He'll sit a year, get even stronger, and then have 2 years to try to get himself to that next level. I see it.
I mean, he's at Florida, man. So yeah, I mean, geez, they're going to be a powerhouse, and they're going to be a powerhouse next year, and he gets to sit and watch that.
And just practice, get better, get stronger, learn it.
I mean, so you're absolutely right. That is a much better situation for him, and a situation that probably a situation that for reasons that we may not know all of, and again was precipitated by whatever the hell Dennis Felton did. But it doesn't really matter, honestly. One thing that I do know is going to come up, and I know this is a thing that came up during the entire hiring process, is that Cleveland State needed to get somebody who has some local ties to Northeast Ohio. Dennis Gates is a Chicago guy. He played his ball at Whitney Young. He went to college at Cal. So, in terms of Midwest roots, he's got them. I guess the question that will now come up is, what are you going to do about Northeast Ohio? Because I know it's going to come up. It's already come up. I will say this though: there will be at least one. There will be at least one Cleveland kid on the roster next year. There will be at least one. Tervel Beck from Cleveland Central Catholic. He announced even before all this was. He announced in the middle of all of this that he was transferring from UNLV. So unless something drastic has changed, he's a forward. I think he's 6'7", 6'8", something like that. he was really highly recruited, in the area, and he ended up going to UNLV. So I'll be interested, unless some majorly disastrous thing happened. He is definitely going to be on that roster next year.
Has Gates announced a staff yet, or just
he has not? I'm going to venture to guess because the press conference is this Tuesday. So if you're listening to this podcast after Tuesday, congratulations, you probably already know who it is. But I do think, I'm of the opinion, I do believe, honestly, that I think he's probably already working on getting his staff right now.
Sure.
Will they be there for the press conference on Tuesday? I don't know. I'd like to think so. I'd like for it not to have. I would definitely like to not have the situation we had with Dennis Felton, where he was hired and then nobody knew who his staff was for about a month and a half afterwards.
It was long.
It was so weird.
And right now, Gates and his staff need to be out in recruiting for this year and the future, which is even harder. Now's the time that everybody's getting offers for 2020.
Yeah, and he's already offered 3 guys already. He offered 2 guys out of the Bosco Institute in Chicago, and then he also offered another JUCO guy. So he's already on it.
I mean, it helps. I'm sure he's been out on the road a lot working as an assistant coach. So that'll help hopefully if he can then convince.
I believe that I believe that they're going to get another 2019 guard signed. What's his name? Julian Dozier out of UAD Jesuit.
I was gonna say I recognize that name.
Yeah. So I know he had a visit. I think we'll probably find out. We'll probably find out on Tuesday if he's for sure. If Dozier's for sure in. If he is, he's definitely playing next year. So we'll be up to at least 5 people.
You can feel the team.
You can feel
Don't
the team.
fall out.
That's right. We can feel the team. So yeah, there you go. So yeah, I think that'll be kind of that's where they're at right now. I really do think that there's going to be I don't know if the entire staff's going to be in place by Tuesday. I know there may be a couple of guys there. Here's one other thing that I didn't realize. One of Florida State's grad assistants, a guy by the name of Adam Balog, he actually is a former manager. He's actually a former manager. He was a former manager at Cleveland State a few years ago. I can't remember if he was there. I'm pretty sure he was there during the Gary Waters era. And he's a grad assistant on the Florida State staff now. He might be a guy to talk to for 1 or 2 of those roles. I mean, obviously he knows our area pretty well. So I mean, worth a shot.
Well,
I know there's a couple of other guys that I think there might be a couple of other guys that kind of sneak in, but I really do think that it's probably going to be. There's going to be at least. I have to think that Dennis Gates is not going to run into the same trap. Is not going to make the same mistake that Dennis Felton did, and when Dennis Felton basically just took his sweet old time to get his staff in, and when they did, he basically got a bunch of guys who didn't know the area at all. I mean, one of them he had Lou Dawkins, but the other 2 that he brought in were 2 guys this was literally their first assistant coaching job. One was a director of basketball operations, the other was a grad assistant. I mean, it was like I joked about it being the Dennis Felton assistant coach apprenticeship program. So, and we saw the results. So I don't know.
It was all of his crew from the heist.
I don't think he got and I think he must have escaped to a non-extradition treaty country or something, because nobody has heard from Dennis Felton at all.
There's no cell signal in that vault he's swimming around in.
That could be it too. Unless of course he did finally fulfill his wish of following around George Clinton and his farewell tour. Might as well. He's got plenty of time on his hands now.
You know, Bob, you want the good news?
Which is, yes.
I believe it or not, voice of optimism here. I have good news for you. Your chances of making the NCAA tournament this year are better than Detroit Mercy's.
This is true. This is very true. Well, and that whole situation is still so convoluted.
Yeah, I want to put an asterisk on my comment because that'll change when it gets reversed. But for as of now, chances are better.
Chances are better. Yes, marginally better. Sure, certainly. So I'm glad you brought up Detroit, and I'm glad you brought up the the postseason in general, because that we can go ahead and segue into something that Jimmy and I didn't get a chance to talk about last episode. We spent all of it talking about Dennis Felton getting fired. What was it like? It was like 2 days before Dennis Felton got fired that the Horizon League announced the tournament format. Or whatever the heck. Yeah, I get the good news is that all 10 teams will be participating this year. Mm-hmm. What's interesting in the top 2 seeds get double byes again.
It's like a couple years in Detroit. That is back
on the table finally. One of the the top 2 seeds will for sure be playing at Farmers Bureau Arena, or whatever the hell that's called. I know the Indiana Fairgrounds. Let's just say they're going to be on the Indiana Fairgrounds. So those 2 teams at the very least will be playing their game. They'll be playing they'll be in the semifinals. So one of the interesting kind of new twists, it's like, there's always seems to be kind of a new twist on these things, and I don't understand why, but it is. But seeds 3 through 10, of course, first round games are going to be at the campus sites of the higher seeds. So 3 through 6 are all going to get a home game in the first round. Second round, however, the top remaining seeds will get another home game. But, and I don't really kind of understand this, so I guess after the first round, the remaining seeds are going to reseed everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to reseed, and that it seems kind of confusing. I'm sure it'll probably play out a little better, and looking at it as opposed to trying to figure out what it's all about.
Really, they're just trying to make sure to protect the top seeds as long and as hard as possible, by all means necessary.
Okay, which is what they did many years ago and got away from. They got away from it during most of the they didn't do a double bye for Motor City Madness at all, did they? I don't remember seeing that.
Yeah, the first year or 2 they did.
Was it okay? Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then Valpo left, and they changed the format again. So
they've changed it a few times. Yeah, and part of that has been like trying to get the scheduling in Detroit itself, the days they could use the arena changed and all that.
Yeah. And then of course, then I'm sure the argument then becomes why is it they didn't have they didn't do the whole tournament in Indianapolis. I can say that probably the reasoning behind that is because in addition to this tournament going on that week, the minor league hockey team that Indianapolis has down there, I can't remember, the Indy Fuel, I believe they're called. They actually have games that week too.
All right, so I have to say this because most people probably don't watch as much Oakland basketball as me, other than maybe OU fans. We played IUPUI last year in that gym.
Yeah.
And it was a daytime game where they brought in like elementary school kids from all over. So it was, crazy. It was it was an 11 a.m. tip.
I think I remember that game, yeah, actually.
And there'd been a hockey game, I believe, the night before.
Yeah.
And the floor was slick, and 2 OU players were injured slipping on that floor from the ice. Fuck. So the fact that they're going to be going back and forth during the tournament, or like right before the tournament, is an awful idea.
So
if somebody, mark my words, somebody is going to slip on a slippery floor next year at that tournament. It's going to be a problem.
Okay, so as I understand it, the games that the Fuel have, because the tournament games for the Horizon League are on that Monday and Tuesday. I don't think I think the last game that the Fuel play hockey wise is the Friday before. So
okay,
they're not doing back. So from what it looks like, they're not doing the back to back thing, and they're definitely not doing it during the day. If you're the men, I think the women are still playing at like 2:00 in the afternoon on the championship game, which that's a head scratcher. But I mean, you got to get everybody in. So,
I mean, like I said, I don't want to be right, but watching Javen Cumberland and somebody else with their feet just going out from under them, just coming on the floor, that's an awful, scary idea.
I'm sure that will come up.
Right.
I wouldn't doubt it. What I will say, I'm sure, even if it does come up, I'm sure we're all going to raise holy hell about it, because that's not a good thing. That's. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's dangerous as hell.
I'd like to think that the Horizon League thought through that, but they also weren't supposed to be hosting on a team's home gym floor, so who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. We're going to have a conversation about that till our dying day, aren't we? At least for the next 3 years, because they have a 3-year deal with Indianapolis. I'd be very interested. And notice, by the way, the kind of the furor has kind of died down a little bit, and maybe because the tourney format actually looks kind of halfway normal now. I think getting all the teams back into participating helps. Now, of course, whether or not they have to readjust everything again, depending upon the Detroit APR situation, remains to be seen. So that's going to be a big thing.
I mean, I don't think their roster's filled yet either, because I think some kids are kind of waiting to see if if there are transfers that somewhere. If they're eligible and you're a grad transfer that still hasn't picked somewhere, playing with Antoine Davis looks real nice. But Absolutely. If they're not for the NCAA, then that's not where someone's going to go.
No. And I don't think, and that really, that really kind of screws, and again, that really kind of screws Antoine Davis into the ground too a little bit, because, there's an extra year where you're like, there's a year where you don't, where you're a top prospect, a top prospect who has aspirations of going to the NBA, and you may very well have the game to prove it. A lot of good it's going to do you if your team is sitting in APR hell.
What if they don't get it reversed and Antoine Davis takes a redshirt year?
That
put some bolt on.
Ooh, then that does. I thought about that. Actually, no, I haven't. That is an interesting situation.
I don't think he will, because I don't think he's going to play 4 years in college anyway. But
no.
I mean,
but so at the same time, I mean, that's an interesting scenario. I mean, I'd be interested in seeing how that plays out. I mean, I don't know.
They're going to reverse that APR ban.
Yeah,
I just don't see it.
Yeah, and we've talked about this on the show. We've talked about this on the podcast. I think we did actually talked about it on the podcast about the whole situation, that whole situation with Detroit, and that whole situation. It was Jermaine Jackson Jr. and who was the other guy? It was Ballantyne, Jack Ballantyne. I thought.
Oh, Jack Ballantyne. Yeah, Jack Ballantyne. Yes.
Yeah. So those two. Basic. So as I understand it, those two just flat out, just straight up, just didn't go to any school whatsoever last year, allegedly.
Right.
And which obviously had major implications as far as the APR is concerned, because that's 2 guys that were not registered for school, and Detroit took the massive hit for it. Now, of course, if I'm not mistaken, both of them have magically reappeared at a college.
They're both going to be LIU Sharks, thanks to a new rebranding by LIU.
Great. Outstanding. And by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because, it's Shark Week. So, I mean, there we go.
There it is.
So that whole situation at Detroit is just such a, that's kind of petty a little bit. Was it because Jermaine Jackson didn't get the gig?
I'm sure.
Which is funny, because Jermaine himself actually ended up in my neck of the woods, as you know, because he was at the Spire Institute coaching.
He's not there anymore. He's left.
He's not. No, yeah, I know.
He's already gone.
Yeah, he's already gone. I know, but he got the year in. He got to coach LaMelo Ball. So there you go.
I think if I remember, he's now like LaMelo's like head handler almost. I think he's overseas with him. Like
really?
I think he became the LaMelo handler.
Really? Well, that would make sense. That would make sense, because LaMelo is actually in the Australian National Basketball League, so that's going to be interesting. Because I know there's a couple of guys who skipped college or realized that there was no chance in hell they were getting into college. Like LaMelo, whose eligibility issues I'm sure would be like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, he chose to go play in Australia and get paid for it. Like, hey, there you go.
What is it? The one kid that did that just signed a 5-year shoe deal.
Yeah, I can't remember who it is.
And he was BJ Hampton or something like that. Is that right?
Something like that. I think because he's playing in, because he's the kid he's the other guy who's playing in Australia too, if I'm not mistaken. No. I thought it was no. Oh, you know what? I can't keep up with these guys. I'm having a hard enough time keeping up with Horizon League stuff.
Right. There's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on, and there will be even more going on now, because you're within the next couple weeks, we're going to find out about we should theoretically find out about the Detroit Mercy situation, whether they are going to get that APR ban overturned or not. We will probably find out a lot more about the direction Dennis Gates and Cleveland State are going to go in terms of their coaching staff, in terms of the players that are in the portal, transfer portal that might be coming out, some new players that are coming in.
Are any other Horizon teams doing the European or overseas trips or anything? I know OU's got games in a couple weeks, which is great. They're going to be in Greece.
They do indeed.
We got teams that should be playing soon. We should get a first kind of exhibitionist look at them.
We do. That is true. And I can't remember who. I want to say somebody's going to the Bahamas, but I can't remember who. Unless I completely blew it and I don't know what's going on. Which, again, also a distinct possibility given the situation. I know there was another school that was going to be playing, has something going on, but I don't know. But I know obviously Oakland for sure is going to be, playing. So I definitely want to, see what's going, see how that whole thing, at the very least I would love to see kind of how that trip plays out for them, which is funny because you have, theoretically, usually when you're going to, when you're taking a summer trip and going to play overseas, that's kind of a bonding experience for your team. And look what the last team who did that, look how that went. And who was the last team who went overseas to play last year?
I guess it was you guys.
It was us. It was Cleveland State, and they went to Italy. Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, no. So much for that.
Well, don't bring that juju on us.
Oh, no. Oh, please! I'm convinced that the Wolstein Center was built on an ancient burial ground that's cursed. And by the way, one of the people that Dennis Gates should bring in is that short old lady from Poltergeist. If she's still alive, I don't know. Exorcise the demons.
You got to do something in there because some things are not right in Cleveland, and there's a lot of things not right about Cleveland, but it's the Wolstein Center. Yeah.
I mean,
it's bad news in there for y'all.
I don't know. Ask Gary Waters what he did for those couple of years. I don't know. Ask him what his secret was to lift the curse temporarily. Because that didn't seem to work out any other time. And he must have lost it the second that, but so.
It's temporary.
It's fleeting. I don't know. Well, we're stuck there for at least another 2 years, so. Because for whatever reason, Cleveland State has had opted to partner with the Cavs for All-Star Weekend, so for NBA All-Star Weekend, and there's going to be certain things that go on. There's certain events that are going to be taking place at the Wolstein Center as opposed to the Q. So.
Well, the good news is that means you guys might get to take the curtain down for a minute.
Oh, good, and maybe get a little bit of money for a new scoreboard. That would be nice.
There you go.
I'm not holding my breath, but you never know. So, all right, well, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up here for us this episode. Matt, again, thank you very much for filling in for Jimmy again.
Thank you so much for having me in.
I think we at some point in time we've got to elevate you to on the masthead as permanent guest host or something like that. I don't know.
I was gonna say I'm happy playing sub right now. I got some things in my own back pocket. We'll see if they come to fruition. But I like playing.
You're like the Jay Leno from Jay Leno of the podcast of the Horizon Roundtable podcast. Remember, he started out as that permanent guest host for Johnny, and then flipped on in, and then came on in once Johnny retired. So
he did all right for himself. I'll take it.
There you go. So as always, go. HorizonRoundtable.com. You can find all episodes of the podcast here. And again, within the next few weeks, we're going to be adding content, so be sure to check that out. You can also find the episodes of the Horizon podcast on wherever you can find podcasts, which now includes, once again, iHeartRadio finally got that stupid thing fixed. I'm so happy about that. That was ever since we migrated over, that's kind of been the bane of my existence. But it's fixed now. I'm a happy guy. So everywhere. So we're back being everywhere again. So we've always been on Apple Podcasts. We've always been on TuneIn. We've always been on Stitcher. We are back on Google Play Music. We're back on iHeartRadio.
I'm a Spotify guy. I always listen on Spotify.
We've been on Spotify for a while, so that's helpful. Spotify never went away, so that's good.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, and then obviously, if you got an Amazon Echo or a Google Home device, you can find us on there as well. So, yep. With that said, that's going to do it for us, and thank you for listening.